Welcome to High Output, the podcast exploring how today's engineering leaders are building tomorrow's high-performing teams. I'm your host, William Cheng, and each episode we sit down with visionary engineering leaders who are forging new paths in a rapidly evolving field. Join us as we gain a window into tomorrow's software organizations and discover what's next for both our profession and the entire software industry. This episode is brought to you by Maestro AI. Engineering leaders, let's be real. Building high-performing software teams has never been more challenging. You're juggling delivery timelines, team health, and the constant pressure to communicate value upward. That's where Maestro comes in. Maestro enables you to improve velocity, spot blockers, and make better decisions faster by seamlessly integrating with your existing tools like Slack, Jira, and GitHub. Maestro cuts through the noise, revealing exactly where your team is spending time and energy. Visit getmaestro.ai for more info, because you don't know everything, but Maestro does. Okay, our guest today is Tacita Moreway. Tacita is the CTO of Textio and a longtime technology leader with a background in engineering, product strategy, and cross-functional team leadership. She does it all. She's known for guiding early-stage companies through high-stakes decisions at the intersection of people, product, and technology, and for wrangling complexity into clarity. At Textio, she leads the company's engineering, product, and AI strategy, building tools that aren't just technically impressive, but also practically useful for both managers and teams facing real workplace challenges. We're super happy to have her on board. All right, well, welcome. I'd love to start by just saying, tell us a bit about yourself.
Of course. So as you were just sharing, I'm the CTO for Textio. So I live in support of engineering, product design, InfoSec, security, all those things. And my background, I started off in engineering and eventually kept getting pulled into management roles. And I would try and go back to code, and I'd get pulled back into management. And at one point it stuck along the way, and I've been in those roles ever since. Outside of my path through engineering into engineering leadership, I was a heavy machinery operator at one point. I have a degree in computer science, but I have a degree in painting and drawing. I founded a landscape design and build company. So I've had a bunch of different career paths along the way, and all of it comes back to sort of informing how I show up in my work today.
Well, how did you pick? It sounds like there's a lot of different paths, a lot of fun choices, right? How did you get to, why is engineering leadership the thing?
It started off like with engineering itself. And I was writing code when I was super young as a kid, and I was learning Logo, and I just always really enjoyed coding. It's just like such a cool puzzle. And as an engineer, like, you could not rip my keyboard out of my hands. I really loved that. But as one of the things I was most sort of interested in was how I was working alongside design, how I was working alongside product, and what that looked like together. And that led me into sort of influencing communication and process and collaboration. And the more I did that, the more my role started to look more like management and helping the people operations side of things. And so I just, various bosses along the way just can be like, hey, how about this over here? And I'm like, no, I want my 3 a.m. bug bash going on. And it just eventually, I still really liked writing code and the act of writing code. Eventually, the thing that I was seeing I was most valuable for and helpful for was in the people side of things, and merging engineering with product thinking and user focus, and bringing that user voice into the work we're doing. And my interest in the design side of things, I stopped being able to ignore that part, and being manager allowed me to really engage in those other parts of problem solving and thinking that I really enjoyed. So like all my different roles and jobs that I've had, my different career paths, it was almost like management allowed me to pull in a bunch of different hats at the same time beyond just writing code. And so that's the one that ended up sticking.
Amazing. What did you start when you were little and coding? What did you start with?
So Logo, like there was this programming language, Logo, and you have this little turtle, it's this little green triangle in the center of your screen.
Oh,
and
okay.
You could draw pictures with this turtle. You could make it do different things, and you could get it stuck in all the infinite loops that you wanted, and like a little low memory computer. So it was just, I was making images. Um, and I would make these little, like, I remember like these sort of case statements I would be able to create. And so I turned them into little like games with my parents, like answer a question one way or the other. I'll tell
Amazing.
my little code and now it's going to draw a triangle instead of drawing a square. And it was like choose your own adventure with making shapes on a screen. And I just
Amazing. Amazing.
totally sold.
Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah. I also coded when I was little, but it was I was one of those what is it? Quick Basic
Yeah.
folks, from that
So
era. So
yeah, a little bit later.
slightly, yeah, a little bit later, but similar memories of finding like, oh man, you can actually do some cool stuff here.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so that's incredible. That's incredible. Okay, so you got into engineering leadership. You're pushed in from all your different experiences. Um, what were some of your big struggles when you first got into the role? Like what was tough?
It felt like running just full force into a brick wall, like full speed. Every day you could feel accomplished as an engineer because you shipped some code or you fixed those bugs. Like there was something tangible to look at, which worked well for me. Like someone who'd worked in manual labor, I liked immediate reactions and responses. Like
Hmm.
when I'm moving a boulder, I move that big rock from place A to place B and I check, done, did a thing. As a manager, it was just like, so what, I had like 17 conversations today. Did I do anything? Did I accomplish anything? Trying to be able to measure or figure out what my value was at the end of the day when you don't have a to-do list, a checkbox of things. Besides, I had infinity one-on-ones.
Hmm.
It was just such a shift of like, how do I feel like I've made progress when I can't see immediate changes? Like, sure, I had like what felt like a successful conversation with someone and maybe a coaching moment, but are they actually going to get value from that conversation and grow as an engineer? I won't know yet. That's going to take that person a whole
Mm,
bunch of time. And maybe I'm not going to be around to see when they've evolved. And so it
right.
was just that measurement of progress. And, like you can't calculate velocity as a manager. That's just like,
Yeah.
what did I do today? I don't know. I had lots of meetings.
Yeah. That's interesting. Well, how'd you get around that? Because quite honestly, this is something that not just managers, I feel like everybody is struggling to feel fulfilled and, that they
Yeah,
accomplished something. And you're absolutely right. If you're writing code, at least you have something, or you're drawing, you're painting and you have a painting at the end of it.
right. That's right.
Um, but how did you get across that hump? I mean, it- it's tough. I mean, I don't know if I've solved this,
I wouldn't
sometimes I
say I've
still feel
fully
like that.
solved, but I'm with you. There's definitely days where I'm like, wait, what now? What? Okay. The way, so the best thing I have looked at is how engaged do the teams I support feel?
Hmm.
How happy are they in their jobs? How much growth am I seeing? Are people like expanding and growing in their roles? And I think it just took time to recalibrate to seeing results at a different rate. I think that was one
Hmm.
piece. Uh, in moments where that wasn't satisfying enough or isn't satisfying enough, then I turned to soliciting feedback and trying to really understand like what's been valuable to you in our latest conversations. What's missing right now, and like really diving into what the challenges are or gaps are for someone's experience. And then I have something very specific and tactical to like lean into, or I get
Hmm.
feedback like, oh no, like this talk you gave over here, this presentation or this whatever thing. When I get positive feedback or feedback about here's where I need more support and help, it just makes it more grounded and concrete. And so that can help like fuel things for me along the way. Um,
Yeah.
in those
It,
moments where it's just like, ah, what am I doing here?
it's to play that back to you, it's really getting feedback and getting feedback. It's a little bit of a different wavelength, right? It's not lines of code or anything like that, but it's maybe in some ways more rewarding, right? You get real human feedback here.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think sometimes also moving outside of my immediate teams. And I do mentorship and coaching with people I've worked with in the past, or folks who I end up connecting with along the way. And that's a great way to get really immediate feedback because you have this short tactical conversation with someone for like 1 hour and you're not going to see them for another quarter or another month, depending on how frequently you're doing that coaching. And so you tend to get very like immediate feedback and reflection of like, this is what was valuable. This is what's going to help me moving forward. And this is what I took out of that conversation. And so then I can be like, oh, cool. I did something helpful to someone today.
Nice. That's great. That's great. So it sounds like you haven't fully solved those
Absolutely not.
concerns, but you definitely have. You've made progress there. What are some new challenges and struggles as you've matured into the role, and even with the changing times, right? There's a lot of new stuff on the horizon with AI, with the world being the way it is. What are some of the new challenges that you're facing?
I don't know that they feel new, but they feel intense right now. Right.
Mm,
I think that for myself and for the people who I work alongside and support, the pace of learning, the demand for learning new things, what the totally outweighs the number of hours you have in the day.
yeah.
And to try and balance keeping up with all of the things and figuring out what are the right things to learn right now. Where am I going too deep or too broad? How do I get the right amount of learning in the right way to best meet this moment for me, to set me up for
hmm
success today in my work, but also for tomorrow that I remain on top of the industry.
Yeah.
That challenge, that balance is just at an all-time high with the pace of technology changing and the volume of information out there. Like if, I fire up LinkedIn, doesn't matter if it's LinkedIn, Instagram, whatever the thing is, it's just this fire hose of like best prompt of the day, or here's
hmm
like the latest and greatest on MCP architecture. Just like, you know, 5 minutes don't go by without some big new announcement of something. And that's,
Right.
as an individual, it's a lot to sort of take in and sort of hold. And in
hmm
supporting other people in their own journeys with that, you're caring about them and making sure they're feeling like they can get through their days without sort of drowning in information overload and context shifting. That feels like a new challenge in just how intense that piece is.
Yeah. How do you filter through all that information? And is it mostly, your examples were mostly AI based, right? You said MCP, you said prompts, that sort of thing. Is that where your head's at? Like, hey, these are the things I really need to keep up on, or are there other aspects as well? I'm biased, working in the AI field. Like
Right.
I kind of have that feed open and I try to click
Yep.
on everything. But wondering like if you feel the same way, or are there other areas where you're also, just trying to click in and understand everything, filter all that data.
Before learning all the technologies, the number one thing I care about first is what are the problems I'm out here trying to solve right now?
Mm,
And so that's always going to come first for me, whether it's through the software that I'm working with and the teams are working on, or just like, what's the challenge? I'm going to be learning about that.
hmm
For example, with Textio, we're doing a lot in the recruiting and the hiring and the talent development space. And
hmm
you think about those challenges that people are facing today. And how are those challenges changing in the face of AI? Because AI is impacting all of those areas of employment.
mm
And so I'm, on the one hand, learning about the problems that I'm tackling.
hmm
And on the other hand, at the same time, trying to learn, you know, what is happening in the space of, I don't even want to say AI. It's our communication and our ideation and how we're thinking and creating and collaborating, which is being completely overhauled with AI.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
it is AI, but it's not just like it's my communication medium, like using prototypes
mm
instead of, laundry lists of feature descriptions and stuff,
Yep.
just
Yep.
really changing how you think and communicate and using AI to do that.
Okay. It sounds like with Textio, it's super interesting too. I didn't think about that, but in the hiring process, that must be really transforming with AI. I've heard some folks using AI to parse tons of resumes,
Mhm.
and then it seems like it's an arms race, right? That people are trying to write resumes with AI or
Yep.
edit it, So, how is that impacting? Like, is that something you're worried about or looking into? How how is it?
Uh,
How are you thinking about that?
as far as from Textio's perspective, it's a fantastic opportunity, right?
Hmm.
Because there's so many things that we can do to really help with those different things, and that we can leverage AI in an ethical and responsible and mindful way. Because Textio, like we've
Hmm.
been an AI company since we opened our doors 10 years ago, so we've been at this for a while, and so
Yeah.
uh, from that perspective, we're just like, there's so many things we get to build and fix and do and tackle from a like from a perspective of someone who's often responsible for hiring and growing teams.
Hmm.
And I look at like just the mass production of these totally genericized resumes that now like
Hmm.
everyone's just sort of like, yeah, like that smells a lot like ChatGPT, like the 17 other resumes I just looked at in the last hour. And
Oh my gosh.
that's that is a very interesting and strange place to like I have a lot of nervousness around what it means for humans trying to find jobs and make it through the noise and stand out, and how we're going to get to do that. And I think AI ultimately is going to be used to solve those problems. Um, but it does seem like just sort of a challenge for our community of people trying to find employment or trying to find and build the right teams.
Yeah. And it's super interesting because I've heard pros and cons on both sides, and I've thought about this a lot too. On the one hand, you do want to make sure that some people are just not very confident in their just, how they've written the resume. They use ChatGPT to help. Maybe they help craft like a cover letter. It could make, things more equitable on the one hand. But on the other hand, I absolutely agree with you. If you get I've actually gotten a person who copy pasted from ChatGPT, and you can tell because they had the little blurb at the end. It's like, do you like this or would you like a more formal version? And I was like, oh my gosh, like I just,
Wow.
and it reflects very badly, right? Like, oh, you
Yeah.
you just literally copy pasted this. So I can see both sides here. Have you seen something similar, or how do you think
Yeah.
about that?
I think, like you say, it can be really helpful in leveling the playing field in some ways. I think there's systems out there today, probably that, you know, there's absolutely companies using AI to filter through the resumes. So,
Mm,
and we all know AI is riddled with bias. You can't get rid of it. Like you
yeah,
can math it, you can measure it, you can monitor it, you cannot actually get rid of it. And
yeah.
so, yes, it may help for sort of supporting more people who might really need that extra support in writing that resume in a way that's clear and selling them in a confident and effective way.
Hmm.
And um, and then there's these little biased bots out there that'd be like, nope, you don't check the right boxes for me, or
Yeah,
your name tells me like I'm making
it's
opinions
true.
as my little like biased AI self about who you are for a company based on your name, where you're from, what school you went to, whatever the things are. Humans bring that bias, and that's where the AI learned it from. So it's not necessarily bringing something new in; it's just something new at a massive scale.
Yeah. Do you what other ways has AI or large language models affected your role and what you do? Obviously, hiring is one aspect. Are there other areas that it's really pushed some caused some change?
Yeah, this for myself, it's great to challenge my own thinking,
Hmm.
and it's not especially when I work with my team all the time. They're used to how I think and communicate, and they might have
Hmm.
gotten to a groove in like understanding what I'm communicating because they've worked with me for a long time. And these systems that are out there don't necessarily have that. And so I can say, like, here's my proposal. What are my gaps? What am I not actually telling a story about? Here's my talk outline. This is the audience I'm giving it to. Am I missing out on this here? Missing out on something? Am I going to meet the moment? And yeah, these systems are not going to be they're not going to hold back. They're going to be like,
Mm-hmm.
no, this is great. You're doing a good job. Whereas someone who works directly with me might be less comfortable being like, Tacita, what are you actually thinking? That's a total miss. Right. So I
Yeah.
really value how I can use AI to challenge my own thinking and push myself to consider new things that I haven't otherwise. Like I mentioned before, sort of prototyping. I've been building things more frequently to communicate ideas and having that
Mm-hmm.
be the method of communication. That's been really helpful. Um, so there's a whole bunch of different ways where it changes my day-to-day work. As far as the impact, again, sort of on the teams, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Like, how do we help people make really strategically
Mm-hmm.
sound decisions about how to spend their time? How much is learning something new versus just like trying, like deep learning versus just try it out and see
Right.
where you get to versus
Right.
no, go the old school way. And um, that's a whole new kind of conversation to be having with people all the time.
That's interesting. Okay. What I want to dig a little bit deeper in the prototype stuff. You're being CTO at Textio, probably very busy, don't have
Yes,
much time to
correct.
actually, and I deep work, right? Like you just mentioned, if you have 13 calls, how do you have time for deep work? So I want to dig into that. Like, what tools do you use to make these little prototypes? And is it are you vibe coding now, or what's going on?
Yeah. So Cursor's my sort of tool of choice for the hour. That might,
Okay.
you know, um, I will move in and out at like sometimes I'll get tired of the infinite loops I'll get stuck in with Cursor. And so I'll be like, all right, I'm going to go
Hmm.
fire up Windsurf right now. But I'm one of those folks that's struggling to find enough time to dive deeply into as deeply as I would want to. And so I'm just like, I've got my go-tos. I've got Claude and Cursor, working
Hmm.
those together, ChatGPT. So I'll use the different systems to actually help me formulate a prompt, bring that into Cursor. I'll build something initially with Cursor and then be like, okay, that was a draft. Give me the prompt that would build a more robust version of this. And then I can like iterate on that and I quickly get through better and improved versions. Um, and because things like Cursor sometimes are a little overeager and you'll describe something and it's like, well, I'm going to throw in these other three things. And now you've got weird buttons and pages showing up. That's,
Yeah.
um, it helps me fine tune my own thinking more. I can be like, wow, I really, really didn't want that. Really didn't need that. Super didn't ask for it. So let's get rid
Hmm.
of it. And now I feel more convicted in my perspective of the idea that I'm working out here. And other times I'm like, oh, great call. Let's explore that more. Like, what would
Yeah.
that look like to build that out further? And
It can help you be creative even a little
totally,
bit.
absolutely. And I think that's the part that I find much more fun. But I'm often not measured on how quickly I write code in my role. And so for me, that creativity is really the end game versus someone who's using it to ship product.
Yeah. Okay. So you've mentioned a few different ways that AI has helped, or is changing your workflow. From we've talked about communication side of things. We talked about even, almost like personal growth, helping you think things through, or on the code side of things. Now we know that code is where everybody's like, oh, AI coding assistants. It's like that's where we're at now. Is that do you agree with that, or do you think the other ones that you talked about seem just as impactful, maybe even more impactful? Where do you think we're going?
All of the above, all of those things. Uh, yeah, I was just talking with a group of engineering and product leaders across a suite of startups, the portfolio of startups. And yeah, these folks, they're just doing absolutely phenomenal things. They are inventing every day new ways of, hooking up different systems, agentic stuff. Like it's
Hmm.
phenomenal what can be done. And in ready for market kind of ways. Like that is not, it's not in the future, it is now. Um, so there I see the value of all of the ways and how we build, how we ship code, how we communicate, how we push our thinking. I don't see anywhere that it's not going to be expanding and shifting and transforming how we think, create, and invent.
Yeah. Then is there a world of in the future, is it a world for people or is it a world for machines? I've talked to some engineering leaders that say, well, I'm not just not going to hire anymore, right? We're going to
Ugh.
have agents try to build code. And I'm thinking, I don't know about that, but you do you. Versus some other
Yeah.
people saying, well, this will just help us build a lot more, think sharper, that sort of thing. Where do you land?
Um, I've, I'll tell you what I'm hoping for. I am hoping that it um, gives more people access to creative, purposeful thinking and um, that it's sure it's going to help people write code faster. It does that now. Speed's great. Yay. The thing that I'm more interested in is there's a lot of challenges and problems in the world, and I don't believe AI is going to, that can help us identify those. But I think you need the human there still running it. If for nothing else, just because this is why we exist, to solve problems and have fun and engage our brains. Like, we don't want to give that up. I don't want
Hmm.
AI to take away the fun parts for me. I
Hmm.
want it to unlock things that I enjoy doing and make them easier and more powerful and more impactful. And I think of, like, as an engineer, the things that would keep me up at night is like, I wanted to do so much more by the end of the day. And if I was an engineer today, I could do that. I could check that box and it would still be me doing stuff, but with new tools. As an artist, like, I think about my different mediums that I have. I paint with oil paint sometimes, and that's a really slow, drawn out process. And sometimes I paint with inks, and that's really quick and dry. Like, you can,
Hmm.
all the different tools we have at our fingertips now just allow us to work on problems in different and new ways, but it still is a human working on a problem. And I don't want to imagine a world where we don't get to do that anymore because we AI'd ourselves out of existence. Like,
Yeah.
it just,
Yeah. Well,
let's do, yeah.
let's
I
do
don't
the
want to
fun.
just,
Let the humans do the human fun stuff.
yeah, yeah. And let's do more than just have it make us get more done in the day or move faster during the day. I just want it. I'm looking forward to the unlock of creativity and invention.
That's fantastic. That's a very it's I think that's the right way to think about it, I feel. Because well, I don't know. On the other hand, it's also depressing, right? If it doesn't go that way, I
Yeah,
don't know how I feel about that. So
totally. Totally.
what do you see happening next? Like, let's say if you could crystal ball it for look into crystal ball for 5 years or even shorter, like 3 years or something, what do you see changing across across engineering and engineering leadership?
I think the structure of our teams is going to look very different. The
Mm.
roles and boundaries of our teams, like right now, in some companies, your product manager and your engineering manager have a decent amount of overlap in some of what they do and some very distinct areas of what they do. I can imagine that collapsing. Like, what does this mean
Mm.
for the roles and boundaries between an engineering manager, a product manager, and a designer that often work together? Or in
Hmm.
the UX researcher, like, those roles, um, each individual in those roles has more access to being able to sort of fill some gaps. Like, if I'm a designer and now I can actually do more of the engineering stuff or think about, like, there's just, I imagine, more fluidity there, which I hope means that more people get to expand into new areas.
Hmm.
But I do think it's just going to change what the boundaries of your job title, like, means, what that entails. I think our team structures, you can get a lot more done with smaller teams. And so
Hmm.
do you end up with a whole lot more tiny little pods of teams? Do you not even have teams anymore? You just have a really big group of people that just sort of like pair up on stuff. I just think the
Hmm.
sort of team structure and um, org structure is going to shift and evolve. And I think there's going to be the what we have to coach for and support as
Mm.
engineering managers and leaders is going to be very different. like that critical thinking and really staying focused on business value and like user need, user problem. Because you can do so much now and you can do it so easily and quickly that like staying focused might get a little bit harder. And like
Yeah,
staying on
that's
target, like,
true.
yes, you can do that shiny, cool thing, but that's not what they're out there trying to buy right now. And that's not what our business model is around right now. So like, I think bringing more of the business context, more of the end user's voice into the room becomes just all the more critical today so that people sort of keep the focus, keep the momentum and the direction going. So
Yeah.
team structure, what we're coaching for, that critical thinking, so you can question the AI. It's going to be really hard. Like Cursor will happily go out and change all the files ever. It just,
True.
and sometimes it really doesn't need to. And like if you're now moving really quickly, you might have built up less of an appetite for slowing down and cleaning things up. And that's going to become a critical role, critical responsibility. But meanwhile, slowing down to clean things up, sort of going against the, hey, now you can move really fast, keep that pace going. So I just think what we're teaching and coaching for and trying to grow in our skills, that's going to evolve.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And I feel like, a key theme through our whole conversation has been growth, right? Like how can people grow? How can they do more? And it sounds like I don't want to put words in your mouth, but my understanding what you said is AI is helping people do more, right? Grow more. And we just need to help. Everybody needs to be careful in how that happens so that we can grow in a way that we can manage this and it doesn't become something that can consume us, right? We need to control it, make sure we're working on the right things. But it sounds like I'm with you. I'm hoping there's a bright future here.
Yeah.
I'm thinking there will be.
The thing I'd be really interested to see is what it does for our human relationships and interactions when now, even the amount of technical communication between like a back-end engineer and a front-end engineer about the different things they're building or whatever, people with different technical expertise, how does our collaboration and communication start to shift and evolve when we're doing a lot more potentially solo or with a smaller group? And human communication, that's an important thing for us to protect.
And it's not solved, right? There's no like best way that works 100% of the time.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, thank you so much, Tacita. This was a fantastic conversation. You've given us a ton of insights across, oh my gosh, not just engineering leadership, but how humans can better themselves, I feel. So thank you so much for taking the time to chat.
Of course. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of High Output. If today's conversation was useful, please take a moment to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Engineering leadership is evolving rapidly, and we're committed to bringing you insights from the front lines every week. Visit getmaestro.ai/high output for show notes, transcripts, and past episodes. Until next time, I'm William Chang, and this has been High Output, where we explore how today's engineering leaders are building tomorrow's high-performing teams.